Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. For the first time since Trump's second inauguration, North Korea fired multiple short-range ballistic missiles into the West Sea on March 10th. The launch coincided with the start of Freedom Shield joint military exercises between South Korea and the U.S., a drill Pyongyang has long condemned. Meanwhile, North Korea has been expanding its military capabilities, revealing a nuclear-powered submarine project, advancing nuclear material production, and modernizing conventional forces, raising concerns about its long-term strategic objectives and its potential military technology transfers with Russia. To explore deeper into North Korea's military advancements, its motivations, and the broader implications for international security and diplomacy as well, we invite into the studio Dr. Bong Youngshik, Research Fellow at Yonsei University's Institute for North Korean Studies. Welcome, Dr. Bong.
Thank you.
And also joining us online is Brian Myers, Professor of International Studies at Dongseo University. Great to have you, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Dr. Bong. So just yesterday, South Korea and the U.S. military authorities began the Freedom Shield exercises to strengthen defense in the Korean Peninsula. So given this deepening military cooperation between North Korea and Russia at the moment, what kind of aspects will this year's exercise focus on?
The focus of the annual joint military exercises conducted by both the U.S. forces in South Korea, USFK in short, and Korean military remains still focused on deterring and potentially defeating any aggression or provocation by North Korean military in many different forms. So far, there was a round of naval exercises in which both naval forces participated to enhance their interoperability for the purpose of the interdiction of weapons of mass destruction belong to North Korea's armed forces at sea. And another one is the ground and air military exercises. This time, in order to enhance the interoperability and joint military readiness, South Korean military battalion commander was in charge of the operational command of the USFK company so that they will have the joint experiences. The focus is to maintain the combat readiness. The slogan of the USFK in South Korea is fight tonight. Any type of military provocation raised by North Korea will be resolutely and immediately dealt with in any moment, and to enhance the joint capability with South Korean armed forces.
Right, so maintaining defense posture would be crucial, especially at this time around. Now, let's also bring Professor Myers to the conversation. So on the first day of the Freedom Shield exercise, North Korea has also made a move. It launched a ballistic missile, the first of which during Trump's second term. Some analysts suggest that this is not only a response to the joint exercise, but it's also a calculated move with the possibility of U.S.-North Korea dialogue in mind. What's your view on this?
Well, for years now, we've seen this pattern of missile launches or weapons tests coinciding with the exercises here, and especially with Freedom Shield. And really, every missile launch in North Korea can be interpreted either as a show of strength or as a protest or as a way of pressuring the United States to come to the table. But the type of missiles that were launched on the 10th of March were close-range ballistic missiles. So these are missiles that couldn't even reach Guam, let alone the American mainland. Now, I think the North Koreans know Donald Trump and his America First attitude well enough to realize that a close-range missile is probably not even going to register in his daily news briefing. So I think that if any message was being sent, it was more likely to have been aimed at the South Koreans. But in any case, the missiles fell outside of South Korea's territorial waters. So all things considered, I think this is one of the less provocative actions that North Korea has taken during Freedom Shield.
So you just mentioned it was a message towards South Korea. What possibility, what kind of message would they have wanted to send?
Well, I mean that if these are close-range ballistic missiles, then obviously South Korea is in the range of those missiles. And it's a way of warning the South Koreans that, the North Koreans are still able to counter any threat from South Korea.
Mm-hmm. But in response to this, the White House stated that it remains committed to the complete denuclearization of North Korea following this launch. Professor, what is the likelihood of North Korea conducting further provocations to challenge the United States?
Well, if you look back at the Freedom Shield exercises of the past, sometimes North Korea makes two different launches. Once there were even three launches during Freedom Shield. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some other launch before the 20th of March. But, you know, the relationship between the United States and Russia has been improving slightly since Trump took over. And Kim knows that Trump still has a certain goodwill towards him, too, judging from some of the remarks that Trump made on the campaign trail. So I don't think that Kim is going to want to do anything too provocative right now. It could perhaps provoke Trump into making another fire and fury statement like he did in 2017. You know, a rash remark like that could make it harder for Trump to propose peace talks and harder for Kim to accept them.
Right, so a big provocation would be unlikely in the near future.
I think so.
And over the weekend, Dr. Bong, North Korea released images of Kim Jong-un inspecting construction sites of a nuclear-powered submarine. And during Party Congress in 2021, the North said its acquisition of nuclear submarines is one of its key military objectives. How significant is the military capability of this submarine that has been released lately?
Any results of North Korea's midterm military modernization as decided at the Eighth Party Congress in January 2021 to develop the 5 kinds of major new weapon systems, including nuclear-propelled submarine, should be taken seriously. But at the same time, you don't want to overestimate or overreact North Korea's announcement of the development of a new weapons system. You have to be objective in analyzing the result. This is very interesting because this is not the first time the Supreme Leader of North Korea made an inspection tour to the construction site of the allegedly, I said allegedly, nuclear-propelled submarines, because the nuclear-propelled submarine was first introduced in 2019, and the North Korean government celebrated the launching event in 2023 in commemoration of the National Foundation Day, which is September 9th. It was called the Kim Mok-yeon Hero nuclear submarine. But South Korean military analyzed the Kim Mok-yeon alleged nuclear-propelled submarine somewhat weird because the design of the submarine was very poor and unusual. For instance, the submarine launched ballistic missile holes were designed to be right on the top of the main bridge. So if Kim Mok-yeon submarine would fire nuclear missiles to the target, then the bridge will be collapsed under the pressure of the missiles. So it was more likely a showcase of the nuclear propelled submarine without actually having completed the construction. So we have to take the new development that Kim Jong-un inspecting the construction of the nuclear submarines for the North Korean Navy with a grain of salt and healthy skepticism, because you do not want to walk into the trap set by North Korea, believing that you have to cough up so much concessions in fear of North Korea, assuming that North Korea has already mastered the construction of nuclear submarines.
Right, a very important point. So if operational, the submarine would be a game changer, but the real issue is whether North Korea has the technology or outside assistance to make it actually viable.
Yeah, one additional point drawn from the launching event held in September 2023, which was very interesting, was that Kim Jong-un himself declared that if any submarine, even without nuclear engine, can deploy and fire nuclear missiles, then it is sufficiently qualified to be called nuclear-propelled submarine. That's a new definition of nuclear-propelled submarine.
Right, that was his definition of a nuclear-propelled submarine. Now, the timing of this nuclear-powered submarine revelation is also kind of noteworthy. It was disclosed at a time when U.S. President Donald Trump was accelerating efforts to end the war in Ukraine, and just ahead of the first Seoul-Washington joint exercises under the second Trump administration. Professor Myers, how would you read into Pyongyang's intent behind such timing?
Well, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the timing because for years now, Kim has been ticking off the boxes of his military wish list, and that has included a nuclear submarine since 2021. So I think this revelation, this news, would probably be coming out now, even if Kamala Harris were president. Now, South Korean experts assume that the Russians are already providing submarine technology. Some are even suggesting that this thing is pretty much a complete set of Russian manufactured parts being assembled under Russian guidance. So I'm not really sure how this timing would help Kim unless he thought that the Americans already knew all about the submarine, which is not unlikely considering that it's probably been under construction for at least a year already. Now, it's going to take at least 3 more years to finish the thing, during which time Trump and Putin could get a lot more friendly with each other. And if Trump says, hey, we want a new relationship with Russia, but you guys have got to stop arming the North Koreans, then that could possibly hinder the submarine's completion. But, the news about this submarine certainly is worrying. I think Dr. Bong is right. We shouldn't take it at face value. They've got a long way to go yet. But if it were to become operational, it would make the THAAD missile defense system pretty useless. And it would also threaten Washington, D.C. and make the Americans think twice about coming to South Korea's defense. Trump also wants to cut military spending, and anti-submarine aircraft like the Poseidon, which you would need to track a nuclear submarine like this around the world, are really expensive. And this is another headache I think that Donald Trump doesn't want.
Mm-hmm. So, like Professor Meyer said, there's skepticism about this North Korea's ability to operate this submarine. And you've mentioned that we shouldn't take it as, what they really face value. Right. But is there a possibility that they have developed its submarine a lot with Russia's support?
Well, we have to give ourselves enough time to see whether there are enough fingerprints of Russia's involvement in North Korea's development of genuine nuclear power submarines, because it would constitute clear red line that Russia is not supposed to cross. South Korea has repeatedly warned Russia not to cross the red line, which is Russia giving decisive assistance to North Koreans to actually succeed in developing true ICBMs. They can, hit anywhere of the United States and penetrate the missile defense system of South Korea and the United States, and North Korea actually acquiring genuine nuclear power submarines. So if we are going to see that North Korea indeed succeeding in developing nuclear propelled submarine, then we have to turn our attention to Russia to assess its accountability. I personally doubt that Russia is not really ready to cross the red line, because it'll be a game changer even for the Trump administration, because all the major cities of the United States will be vulnerable to secret attack by nuclear submarines of North Korean Navy, including Washington, D.C., New York, you name it. That's a direct and grave threat to the national security of the United States that any president, including President Donald Trump, cannot afford. So I don't think Russia will be that bold to assist North Korea's development of nuclear power submarine. And there's a very serious difference in terms of operational capability of diesel engine submarines and the nuclear power submarines. The operation of nuclear power submarine can be lasting at least 6 years without coming up to the water level. 6 years
Wow.
under the water all the time, even 14 years. Nuclear submarine has to come out of the water every 3 months on average, not because of the engine problem, but because humans fatigue. But diesel engine submarines should come out of the water at least every 3 days, so they are really vulnerable to monitoring by your opponents. So I don't think North Korea is really close to actually acquiring the capability to operate nuclear power submarine because it's such a huge task.
Right, and also the diplomatic implications, like you've
Right.
mentioned as well. Now, meanwhile, satellite imagery has also suggested that North Korea's first early warning aircraft is nearing completion. If North Korea successfully deploys it, what would be its military significance, Professor Myers?
Well, so far, the weakest link in the North Korean military has been its Air Force. I think everybody knows how outdated both the airplanes and the ground-based radar system are. But this airborne early warning aircraft, if it's working properly, and that's a big if, would make it possible for the North Koreans to spot threats earlier, and that would give their Air Force more time to respond. The system would also relay information to ground-based air defenses, give them a little bit more time. And by the way, this is not all bad news from our perspective, because it might well reduce the danger of North Korea overreacting to something that isn't really a threat. So perhaps it's good if they've got a few extra seconds there. But this is perhaps a bit like the nuclear submarine issue that Dr. Bong was talking about, and that this aircraft probably won't be in operation for at least a year or two more. And the airplane that's being used for it, the Ilyushin 76, is such an old model that some experts are wondering if all that sophisticated radar can even be properly installed in it. But, you know, the North Koreans have a habit of exceeding our expectations. So I think this should be taken seriously as a sign that even their Air Force is being significantly upgraded.
So with all of these developments that North Korea has said to be true, it seems like their focus is changing. It's from the conventional what they had. They are modernizing its weapons development. What is the reason behind this, Dr. Bong?
Well, North Korea has to accumulate all the strategic cards to play against the Trump administration in the upcoming negotiations to make a big deal. North Korea failed to make a big deal with the Trump administration during its first term with no deal in Hanoi summit meeting between President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un in February 2019. And after that no deal in Hanoi, North Korea chose the frontal breakthrough policy focusing on self-reliance. And the next 3 years, which will coincide with the COVID-19 pandemic, were so difficult for North Korean regime and its people. So North Korean regime is desperate in terms of seizing every opportunity made available by the Trump administration in the future negotiations. Preparing for that possibility, it makes sense for North Korean regimes to save as many strategic leverages as possible, like new weapon systems, whether they are really complete or not. It is important for North Korean regime to make Washington, D.C. believe that North Korea's strategic capability has been immensely improved. Speaking of North Korea trying to improve its air forces, that is a really weak point for North Korean armed forces. So North Korea benefited from the suspension of the joint military exercises between USFK and South Korean military after the Singapore summit meeting between Trump and Kim in 2018 until the end of the first term of Donald Trump in 2020. That was a good time for North Korea not having to worry about joint military exercises. But with the inauguration of Biden administration, then the two countries, South Korea and the United States, resume and enhance the joint military exercises dubbed as a vigilant storm. And North Korea wasted no time to vehemently criticize and protest that joint military exercise in the air, saying that the term vigilant storm is a reminder of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in the name of Desert Storm, and mobilized the North Korean aircrafts, but they were so outdated, as Professor Meyer correctly explained. So many of them just crashed into the ground. So North Korea can bark loudly about this joint air exercise by USFK and South Korean Air Forces, but it doesn't really have good leverage to counter with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's from the inside point of view, but there still are concerns from many people, as we've seen. There's deepening cooperation with Russia as well. So, given this growing concerns over North Korea's nuclear advancements and weapons development, of course, what kind of measures should or could South Korea take?
Well, one thing is that South Koreans, repeat the same message or gentle warning to Moscow that it will be a game changer if Russia is going to cross the red line. There will be a great deal of cost if Russia decides to assist North Korea's development of these new weapons systems. And also it is important for South Korea to keep the accomplishment achieved during the Biden administration in terms of the enhancement of the trilateral security cooperation that involves South Korea, United States, and Japan. And Prime Minister of Japan, Ishiba, actually obtained a green light from President Trump to continue the basic framework of this trilateral security cooperation against North Korea. So South Korea needs to do its own part to maintain the fruits of the cooperation for the past 4 years during the Biden administration.
So it would be key to strengthen dialogue with the Trump administration to maintain this trilateral cooperation with Japan.
Because
right?
it's not only beneficial for South Korea and Japan, but it is also beneficial for Trump administration because focus of Trump administration foreign policy is to counter with China, not just North Korea. So it makes sense for Trump administration to remain supportive and positive about trilateral security cooperation, although that is the legacy of the Biden administration.
So we'll really have to see. It would be the coming months will be very pivotal in securing the landscape. But we'll have to leave our discussion right here. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Bong, excuse me, and Professor Myers, of course. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.